this video I'm going to knit Videung hair bow. The video is meant to be a tutorial or a visual guide as a complement to a pattern that is available in my Ravelry store, which is linked in the description box below. To start, you're going to need slightly less than 1 skein of a mohair yarn. I used about 18 grams for my sample. You are also going to need 3.5mm needles, or if you knit quite loosely, I would go down a needle size or 2. You don't need to gauge swatch to match my gauge for this project. Just find a needle size where you like to gauge. I am going to start by knitting the upper part of the bow. Cast on stitches according to the pattern with a standard cast on. When you have cast on your stitches, you're going to knit a few rows in stockinette before you start with the bobbles. All parts of the bow are knit flat, but you can use circular needles or regular needles, whatever you're most comfortable with. I'm using double pointed needles since they are short and easy to use in a video, but I would not recommend to do so if you're a beginner since the stitches can easily fall off. When you start knitting the bobbles, note that they are smaller than regular bobbles. You are going to knit a stitch as usual. Then you're going to knit the same stitch through the back of the loop. Then you're going to knit through the front once again. You should now have 3 stitches for your bobble on your needle. You're going to turn your work around, and then you're going to purl the 3 stitches that were created for the bobble. When you have purled your 3 stitches, you're once again going to turn your work around. Slip the first stitch, then knit 2 together. And lastly, the slipped stitch is passed over the stitches that were knit together. When you have knit your first bobble, you're going to continue knitting in stockinette while repeating the bobbles whenever the pattern tells you to do so. When completed, the upper part of the bow should look like this. You are now going to bind off using a standard bind off. When you have bound off, you're going to cut the yarn and place the upper part of the bow to the side while you knit the other 3 parts. The lower part of the bow is knit in 2 separate pieces. The pieces are knit from the bottom up, starting with a few stitches and then shaped with increases on both sides. The reason that the lower parts are knit separately is that you want both sides of the bow to look identical, and you therefore want to shape both points from the bottom up. Except for the shaping, the lower parts of the bow are knit as the upper part, where you knit in stockinette, repeating bobbles whenever the pattern describes to. You're then going to bind off using a standard bind off as before. You have now knit the 2 main parts of the bow. The only remaining part is the middle, which is a small rectangle that is going to hold the upper and lower bow together. The last part you're going to need is the middle part. The middle part is knit in the same way as the upper part, but on a much smaller scale. I'm therefore not going to show how to knit it in the video, but you can see it here. When you have all 4 pieces, you're going to need to block them. As you can see here, the points of the bow will otherwise point upwards, and you also don't want the sides to curl inwards. You can see the difference here in a comparison to a bow that has been blocked. The reason you will want to block your bow before it's been sewn together is that you don't want full lines at the edge of the bow. I have now wet blocked all of my pieces, pinning them to a blocking mat. I used lots of pins to get the exact shape I want. We're going to start by sewing the upper bow into a tube. You'll want to put your other pieces to the side while you sew the upper bow. Start by folding your upper bow so that the cast-on edge faces the bind-off edge. You'll want your bobbles to point outwards. We are now going to whip stitch the edges together. I'm using the leftover yarn from when I cast on my stitches but you can use a new piece of yarn. It doesn't matter since all ends will be hidden by the middle part of the bow. I like to tie my ends together, or you can wrap your yarn around and tie it together. This is not a necessary step, but it makes the bow look neater. When you have tied your ends together, you can just cut them. There is no need to hide them since they will be hidden by the middle part later. Next, I'm going to sew the bind-off edges of the two lower parts of the bow together. I once again secure any ends by just tying them together and cutting them short. I am once again using a whip stitch since the seams will not be visible. They will be hidden behind the middle part as well as the ends. Next, I'm securing the ends left by the cast on. You'll want to be careful following the pattern of the fabric since you don't want this to be visible. I am now folding the lower and upper parts of the bow as I want them. I'm then going to wrap the middle part around the upper and lower bow, and then I'm going to sew the cast on edge against the bind-off edge. If you want to use a hair tie to secure the bow to your hair, you'll want to place it before closing the middle around the rest of the bow. I'm using a whip stitch once again since I don't care if the seam can be seen since it's at the back of the bow. If you want the seam to look neater, you can use a horizontal mattress stitch here. I am securing the ends by just hiding them behind the seam. The bow is now ready, and you can complete it by gluing a hair beret at the back. You can also just stick a bobby pin into the middle.